Hey everybody, it's LavenderTowne. And with this video, it's become clear that nothing is safe from me turning it into a character design, so today I'm going to be turning the parts of the brain into characters. So there are a lot of ways you can break up the brain, but one of the first parts that you're always going to see separated basically is the brain stem. The brain stem is obviously a really huge and important part of the brain. It connects the brain to the other parts of the nervous system via the spine, and without it, things would be very difficult. The brain stem in real life is like white, and it's very gross looking. I'm not going to put up an image of an actual human brainstem, but I did look one up and it's basically very like white and stringy and nerves and that sort of thing. So I'm trying to basically cut out the shape of the way that the brainstem is. It sort of tapers down a little bit, and it immediately gave me this almost sort of showman-like sort of posture, I guess. So that's kind of what I'm going with. Of course, I had to add some vertebrae from the spine on the central part of this character, almost like a necktie, I guess, that travels all the way down this strange nerve-like jacket that he has. So the brainstem is in charge of a lot of automatic things, things like the rhythm of your heart, keeping your blood oxygenated properly, as well as such important things like breathing and any reflexive activities like sneezing, vomiting, coughing, or swallowing. So naturally the brainstem is very, very important. It's not as associated with more complex things like storing memories or having emotions. It's really that core essentials, just the absolute bare minimum that you need just to even keep the body going. It's broken up into three different parts: the midbrain, the pons, and the medulla. The medulla is where a lot of that reflexive stuff is held. It's at the bottom of the brainstem, right where your brainstem connects to your vertebrae of your spine. So you really get the sense when you're looking at the brainstem that it's just it's almost like cords or something. It really looks like a cable of passing through information, which is very interesting. And for the color palette, I wanted to keep it really accurate, so we're mainly just dealing with these sort of off-white colors. I tried to switch it up whenever I could just to give this character somewhat of a color palette that's not completely monochromatic. And I added in this sort of fleshy red color between the vertebra and the suit, just so that there's any interesting shape language at all. This character I feel would be very intuitive, and he has a sort of old god, ancient kind of spookiness to him, just because the brainstem is, it's things that we don't really control in our brain, things that we desperately need, but that, if you asked us to sit down and try to focus on these things like the beating of your own heart, this is information that's basically unknown to us consciously, and yet it is part of our own mind that is operating all the time and keeping us alive. That is hugely important. I think that's kind of spooky to think about, that your brain is doing stuff without you knowing about it all the time. So here he is. He's very long, he's very spooky, and he's very strange. If you have a name for him, please let me know. Next up is the frontal lobe. Now, this is the front part of the brain, and it's also the biggest lobe of your brain. It is incredibly important, and when you think about your brain and your mind and what it's capable of, you're probably thinking of something that the frontal lobe at least partially covers. It's associated with memory, emotions, impulse control, problem solving, social interaction. The list goes on and on. Even motor function is importantly covered by this lobe of the brain. So the frontal lobe is really in charge of everything to do with actually helping you out of situations and stuff, and even your very ability to form memories, short-term and long-term to some extent. The emotional control and impulse control aspect of the frontal lobe isn't finished developing usually in humans until they're 26-ish, which is why even people who are adults, when they're young adults 18 or whatever, they still sometimes act proper teenagers. That's because this part of the brain doesn't even finish cooking basically. So that impulse control won't really be solidified, and the future planning part of the brain probably won't be 100% done growing until you're in your mid to late 20s, which I always thought was kind of interesting. So for this one, I really wanted to focus on like the wrinkles and folds of the brain, especially because the previous character was very like vein-ish and like a very corded sort of design. So this one I was trying to do more of like ruffles and wrinkles and things that we really associate with the lobes of the brain. It was a little tricky at first to kind of cover all of the things that the frontal lobe is known for affecting, like motor control, problem solving, that kind of thing. So for motor control, I gave her little ballet slippers to imply, you know, the ability to like dance or balance. And she's also holding a Rubik's Cube that's almost solved. So that's, you know, problem solving. And then of course I went back to my old classic symbolism in character design by giving her a smiley face and a frowny face in the irises of her eyes to show that she is helping control emotions or helping you feel emotions. And for the color palette, I wanted to go to a more classic living brain pink color. Again, it's relatively monochromatic other than the irises of her eyes because I'm trying to be relatively realistic, but I generally just tried to give her a really like puffy, living kind of energy, I guess. And yeah, I tried to keep it to these like soft pink colors, as well as like making sure to sort of almost shape her body in the shape of the frontal lobe, just kind of very subtly. I wanted her to look sort of bright and friendly because the frontal lobe is also the home of our personality. If you're talking scientifically, this is really where like the soul is stored. Everything that you like are as a person, your traits are mainly coming from this part of your brain. And I think that's super interesting. It also houses the Broca's area, which is a part of your brain that helps you speak and understand speech. So yeah, very, very important. Next up is the temporal lobe. It's named because it is kind of by our temples. If you looked inside of our head or it was transparent, it would be right around where our temples are. And the temporal lobe is really associated with interpreting sounds. Obviously, like your ears are doing the hearing, but your brain needs a way to actually like translate that into information that we can use, and that's what the temporal lobe is mostly known for being able to do. It also helps you create new memories and long-term memories, kind of like the frontal lobe also does, and it plays a significant role in using languages, recognizing language, and like spoken language interpretation in your brain. So for this character, as well as putting her actually within like the silhouette again of the temporal lobe, I really wanted to focus on this like language and writing memory part of it because that is like, those are the key things I kept seeing over and over when I was doing research on this. So inside of her irises, I put the kanji for like language, and also like ABC in her other iris. I might have actually switched out the ABC with some with a like watch hands at the end too, because it's also associated with like time a little bit. And I wanted to show her writing in a book, sort of as like a visual symbol of this part of the brain's ability to write new memories into your mind. This part of the brain is also heavily associated with interpreting what information you get from smells, as well as your ability for musical rhythm. It really has a lot to do with the senses. It's a very sensory kind of part of the brain. And it's sort of fascinating doing research about this kind of stuff, just because we still, even as far as we've gone with our understanding of medical information, we still have to do quite a bit of guesswork figuring out exactly which part of the brain is doing what. So when you're looking these things up, you'll see a lot of like, it's associated with this, or like, this is what damage to this part of the brain will cause, and sort of extrapolations from that. So it's a really fascinating sort of field of study, because there's still a lot more to learn and understand about how the human brain actually works and operates specifically. This part of the brain also interprets some pain signals as well, and I tried to symbolize that by putting this little like sword on the side of her headphones, which are there to show that it's kind of important for understanding music and sound. I tried to keep the color palette again kind of realistic, which I sort of regret. All the parts of the brain are usually either sort of like pinkish color or like gray or white once, you know, the brain is not active anymore. So we're getting a lot of very low-key, very desaturated characters in this video. So those were the first 3 sections of the brain that I turned into characters. As you can see, there are a few lobes as well as the cerebellum, which I haven't gotten a chance to do yet. So if you'd like to see me do the other parts of the brain, please let me know and I'll make a part 2. I hope you enjoyed the video and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you to all of my wonderful patrons, including Winterheart, Harold Bird, T-Hill Music, Tack Afton, Teddy Spaghetti, Avant Grape, Dendro Was Stolen, Haley, First Spookable, Vegas, it's Jamal, Kay, Rodrigo, Mom Milk, Kadaria, Deadly Nightshade Art, Maria Vasquez, Astral Fox Art, Middle Seed, Dulce Mori VT, Lilia Lura, The Expressive Poker Face, Marcy Axolotl, Tsubaki, Michael Lavalley, Cutie Pie, Rune Raincrow, Rainwater Pulse, Ice Cream Pal, Cola, Insadmia, Your Boy ST, JJ Jade, and of course, Lib 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 Lib.